we are live. Greetings, everyone. Right. Here we go.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit, on the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the...
You, Masher.
Up to me?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting me tonight to join this auspicious group of people who are interested in airplanes. And, you know, I do have one little story I'll start off with. This is a no shice. This is one you got to believe because it's a true story. And I like that little title you have. So there I was in North Vietnam on June 30th, 1967, and just making this little old bomb run on a bridge south of Hanoi. And I pulled off, and all of a sudden there was a thump, and my hydraulics went to zero. My stick went to the side. The plane flipped to the other side. I'm only doing 450 knots, and it flipped over and went straight down, and all I could see was green. And the green was spinning, and it was getting big fast. And I couldn't get to the face curtain. I was trapped and pinned against the canopy in an A-4, which is already tight, and I was pinned against the canopy. And luckily, I had Navy training. I dropped my hand and hit the alternate ejection seat, and that was it. That's there I was.
Whoa!
In a situation that I'll describe later. Of course, the canopy hit me going out, and almost tore my arm off. It broke my arm, and it severed the humeral head off my arm and shoved it in by room. See, here it is today. That's it. I can move my arm about an inch. So, and it broke my back, of course, and dislocated my knee, and my leg was sticking 90 degrees. It was like a propeller. So my leg was spinning like a propeller. At 500 miles an hour, and snapped off the anterior and the posterior cruciate. Well, anyway, that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. But so,
dear God!
I'm not gonna, that's only the beginning. I'm not going to tell you anymore until later.
Oh my God!
Well, I'm now terrified, facing nightmares, and yet still honored to be in your presence. Greetings, everyone. Repeat here. You're listening to the podcast, so there I was. Thank you for joining us. I'm at home in New Hampshire tonight. Where's my co-host?
Oh my gosh, I am blessed to be coming to you from an undisclosed location in the state of Florida, and I can tell you it is above freezing where we are. But more importantly, it is our distinct pleasure to welcome retired Navy Captain Mike Masher McGrath, author, attack pilot, and all-around American badass. Welcome.
Right on. Indeed. Welcome, Masher.
Thanks.
Oh my God.
My honor to be here with you guys. A bunch of we can fly with our hands, and here I was.
Right? Yeah. Just don't shoot your watch, sir. Fantastic. Oh, well, let's back up a little bit.
Wow.
You didn't start off as an A-4 pilot. How did you start your interest in aviation?
I'll just quickly run through. Well, it's only going to talk. Everybody got 6 hours to listen. I think we can cover this in 6.
We got it all the time in the world for you.
Okay, I promise I'll shorten it up. But I came from a small town in western Colorado, and I always wanted to go to the Naval Academy, and never seen an airplane, and I'd never seen a golf course, and so I had no knowledge of airplanes or aviation. But when I was 18 years old, went to the Naval Academy and graduated. And then I I got this ride in an indoctrination ride in an N3N. I'm going to quiz more. How many people know what an N3N is?
That's the Jenny, isn't it?
Is that a
Well,
Jenny?
no, it's a Stearman, but you put a
Stearman.
pontoon on the bottom of it, and you strap a leather helmet and you on your head, and you talk into a Gosport. Nobody knows what that is, but as an open cockpit and a pontoon airplane, my first touch of an airplane, and we got in the air, and the first thing I said to the pilot was, "Wow, let's fly under the bridge." I think that was the beginning of my crime spree, was wanting to fly under the bridge. But luckily, he didn't do it. There it is. That's it. Anyway, and later I got a T2 ride down in Pensacola, and now you can go fast, and I like that. So I was lucky enough to get to naval aviation. I had a high enough grade point to get into naval aviation. Went through training, and I stood first in my class and did a 14-month course. I think 18 months course, but I did it in about 12 months because I never had a down. And I stood number one. Everybody else got their airplanes, and I didn't get an airplane assignment. And finally, they said, "Well, we take the top of the class back to be instructor pilots."
Oh, geez.
Oh, you were a surgrad.
Everybody else got to fly fighters, and but after that year of instructor, I did get an A4, and I joined VA 146 in Lemoore, California, the garden spot of the Earth, I think. And when the fog lifted, there we were. That's my squadron. So,
Nice.
but I was en route to join a squadron called VA 146, Air Wing 14, and there was another guy in VA 144. His name was Everett Alvarez, and he was on that deployment, and a lot of my other friends. But they had just been involved in a thing called the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and I guess you guys know that all those guys, the guys in my squadron, VA 146 and VA 144, including Alvarez, he was the flare airplane. Alvarez was going to light up the PT boats with the flares, and the other guys were going to attack. Well, Alvy's a friend of mine to this day, and all those guys are still my friends. But the bottom line is, they flew around in foggy, dangerous conditions, and then they finally figured this is dangerous. So they turned on their lights so they could see each other. One guy rolled in on a destroyer, and he was going to strafe the destroyer. The destroyer turned on his lights, says, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," because they were following everything. And he said, "Oh my God," he pulled up. He almost strafed the destroyer. But the bottom line is, and CAG Stockdale was there, by the way. The bottom line was that there were no PT boats out there. And everybody landed and said, "What are we doing out there?" And two different carriers, airplanes, F4s and A4s from two different carriers. This is a Constellation.
Okay.
Everybody went to bed. The next morning, a message had gone out during the night. CAG Stockdale got up and read the message board, and there was a message from his carrier that said, "Oh, we were attacked by PD boats. We sank 2 and we damaged 3. And it was right to Washington." And Stockdale says, "What's this? We didn't debrief that last night." Well, we figured out over the years, I think it was a false message from CIA to the president, which started the air war in North Vietnam.
Oh,
and it's written about in Stockdale's book and other books. But
Sure.
If you want to start a war, just write a message to the president.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding, huh?
Yeah, I ended up flying 157 combat missions from Ranger, that cruise. And at the end of the cruise, I said, all the guys are jumping out and going to the airlines, and I want to go too. I want to be an airline pilot. So on January...
You jumped out and went somewhere else.
Well, January 22nd, 1967, I put in my letter of resignation, and my squadron commander's jaw dropped, and I was on the way. I'd been to Denver and talked to United, and I'll be in class in June in Denver, Colorado with United Airlines. And it turned out that I showed up for my interview 25 years late.
Oh.
And they said, "Where were you?" And I said, "Well, I missed my interview because I was in jail." Well, we did have a big
Is that a
laugh
problem?
about it.
Yeah.
This is 1992, 25 years late. I showed up late, and I did after all those years. I can only use one arm, but they said, well, you can still reach the controls and the circuit breakers, so you're hired. So I got hired at age 52 in the United, and that was another career. You got any questions up so far?
Fantastic. Oh man, right. This is gold. I don't think we've very often hit hit show titles so early on. The beginning of my crime spree.
That's probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was fantastic. I was thinking of naming it after your book, which we'll get to in a little bit, that you have a book out. But I'd like to back up just a little bit, if you don't mind, and chat about high school and the Naval Academy. How did you decide to go to the Naval Academy? I didn't know about it when I was graduating high school. I wish I had.
Yeah, it's well, the Naval Academy had a program where the top students would take, and for Christmas leave, they'd take movie projectors and films back to their hometowns. And then they'd get hooked up with people like Lions and Kiwanis and Rotaries service clubs. And they'd invite students from the high schools to a luncheon. And I happened to attend one of those, and they showed this thing, which would be the equivalent of, remember Men of Annapolis, the TV series? It's an old one, John Wayne type things. And I saw that film at a luncheon, at a Rotary luncheon, by a guy that went to my high school, but he was in the Naval Academy. And I said, wow, that looks like fun. And during that time, I was a good wrestler. I was a district champion and had a good wrestling career from a little high school. But so I applied to the Naval Academy. Well, the first year I didn't stand too high, so I went to the University of Colorado, and I wrestled there on the team as a freshman at the University of Colorado. And I reapplied, and this time they said, well, your grades are much higher and you're doing better, and you have a dual appointment to Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy, your choice. And I took my physical in Lowry in Denver. And those kids were going to school in World War II barracks that looked like square boxes. And I said, at 18, I had no idea what was going on 70 miles down the road at the Air Force Academy. It was under construction.
Okay.
So wisely at 18, I said, I'm not going to go to school in those barracks. I'm going to go Navy. So, without any real knowledge, I just chose Navy. It's just luck of.
And little did you know that it's the Air Force prides itself on the finest quarters, all the services.
But anyway, that's it. So I did have a fun thing, but kind of the one good thing of my wrestling, it did help me in later life, and survive Hanoi. Okay. Was I was tough. I was a tough little kid out of a small mountain town in Colorado, and they had a big tournament there at the Air Force Academy. They had all these new recruits. And I ended up wrestling this guy that just, oh my God, in the finals of we had 1,200 cadets in this finals, and it was packed, and they're screaming and yelling. And I did reach the final, and they said, wow, that guy's trying to kill me. So I fought back and I beat him. I walked off the thing after getting my hand raised, and this big old brute of a guy that was the Olympic wrestling coach, he was also the Naval Academy wrestling coach. He grabbed me by the wrist and he said, who are you? And I told him, and he said, you just beat a state champion. You're going out for wrestling. And I was drafted right there. So they had me for the next 4 years, and I was varsity for 4 years and was captain of the team and went to the national championships and wrestled in the nationals and placed a couple of times in the Easterns. And I always like to say, I beat some of the good guys, and then I got beat by the underdogs. So I was just an average wrestler, but the experience did give me the toughness to make it through Hanoi years later.
You don't know why you got all that character, but in the end, you figure it out, right? So, sir, what year did you graduate from the Naval Academy?
I graduated high school in 57, Naval Academy in 62. So it's for all our listeners, it's ancient history, probably before most people were born. But yeah,
I was here in
I am.
'62. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, so we had some famous people. Roger Staubach was a freshman when I was a senior, but we didn't know who he was because he was only a freshman. He became Roger the Dodger the next year. And the guy ahead of me that used to get dressed next to me was a guy named Joe Bellino. He was an Iceman Trophy type guy, and he was about 5'8", but he was so fast nobody could catch him. So Navy had some good teams back there, back in that time with Roger Staubach and Joe Bellino. I was never a very good ball player, but I was a good one-on-one.
Okay. Wow. Fantastic.
And
So, go ahead, Vic.
When you went to jet training, was that in Meridian or?
Yes,
Teesville?
I did. We had the T2A, which was underpowered, but it was a nice little straight wing trainer. In later years, I got to fly the T2, I think it was B or C, with the T30, was it T46 engines, TP46 something.
Had the T38, the J85s.
No, not that. No, it was a turboprop. But anyway, when I was in Ecuador, 20 years later, I did get to fly the Ecuadorian T-34 with the turboprop power engine.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's the Buckeye.
I got to fly that one. That's the T2A, and then later I went to 2 engines, I believe.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
that's the model. That's the model repeat, and I flew with the 2 engines. You flew a single engine T2.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, single engine. I was single engine T2.
And you took that to the boat? Did you get carrier quality?
Yeah, yes, I did. Yeah, that's my first carrier quals was off Pensacola.
What was that like? What was your first carrier qual experience?
Well, that's kind of fun. The first thing you learn, you get through your training, and you're out there doing FCLPs over there at the Barron Field,
which is field carrier landing practice.
Yeah, FCLPs, and you do that in the middle of the night. And the same at Lemoore, you do it at 2 or 3 in the morning, and the air is real still and everything's dark. But anyway, when the LSO says, "Hey, you're ready to go to the boat," you're ready. And then the next thing he tells you, you're not taking an instructor, you're going by yourself. There's nobody in the back. And so all those students qualify with nobody in the back. They have to do it on their own. And you're right. You have chills going up your spine. It's just like your first solo. You remember that was scary to do your first solo. No instructor in the back. And same way for carrier landings out there. They had a carrier assigned to Pensacola, World War II carrier. I remember it might have been a straight deck even. But somehow you do it, and you make your 6 landings, and you go home, and you're off. You're a naval aviator en route. Don't have your wings yet, but you're going to get them after about another 6 months. But it was exciting.
Fantastic. Aside from landing on the carrier, which is always a close call, any close calls in flight school?
Oh God! Yeah,
ever tickle the handle?
Well, I think I've used up 8 of my 9 lives, so
right
I'm a little more careful nowadays. yeah. So I didn't have any. Just one. I was at full throttle on a cat that was loaded with bombs, and I was just ready to launch. I'm up at 100%, and the guy's he's gonna lower his hand for the catapult. All of a sudden, he starts running all over the place and saying, "Cut the engine, like this, cut." And I said I wasn't going to touch that thing until he went with the proper signal like this.
Yeah.
And finally, he figured it out, and he did the proper signal, and I cut it back. Well, it turned out that I had blown out the entire engine shroud out of the airplane and wrapped it around the blast deflector. If they had launched me at that moment, I would have had 0 airspeed, and no thrust. But I would have had speed, but no thrust, and would immediately gone in the water. So that was one of my lives, I think, a close one. And
there you go.
Yeah.
Would you
there's another
explain
one.
briefly to our listeners why it is you will not go to idle when you're in tension and they're telling you to go to idle without the proper signal? What would be bad about that?
Well, we're all trained to, for perfect safety and with the correct signals. And if I had if I had if I had done cut the engine and they launched me, they would have thrown a piece of lead into the ocean, and and I
And you
was
with it.
and me with it. Yes, so that was really important. You follow the correct signals. And for a moment, that guy was when he saw the tail, the guts of my engine and tail and the thrust shrouding leave the airplane and go out the back and wrap around the blast deflector. He got so excited that he forgot his own procedures.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's just I didn't want to end up as a piece of lead in the bottom of the ocean.
Fortunately, the shooter also saw that and didn't pull the trigger early.
That was
Oh,
just
my
one. Here's an interesting one. And we all go through this thing of aviation is 1,000 hours of boredom interrupted by a stark moment of terror. Those types of stories.
Sure.
And I had one of those moments. I was a Lieutenant JG, and I pulled off a strafing run behind the commanding officer. Well, actually, he was the XO, and the XO pulled off this target, and I pulled off with him. We're doing 450 knots, and as I'm running with him, wham! And I just like that, wham! My bulletproof screen shattered, and all of those little side panels around the bulletproof screen turned to dust and hit me in the face. And I had my visor down, but the glass shards went up underneath my visor and into my eye. And this is one of those no shitter stories.
Okay.
I was blind with an explosion I couldn't explain, and wind coming in at hundreds of miles an hour and whirling around in the cockpit. And I didn't know whether to eject or what to do. So luckily I didn't. I looked sideways. I could make out where the Earth was. I knew where the Earth was and where the blue sky was. And the engines were still running. I got emergency vectors into Yuma. I landed in Yuma, and I got the airplane on the runway, stopped straight ahead, ambulances all around me. They jerked me out of the cockpit and ran me into surgery and the hospital, and washed out the glass in my eyes. And I got back to flying. So now you ask, well, what happened?
Yeah.
Why should a pilot, have an explosion and his screens things? Well, it turned out that the XO finally admitted that he had cleared his guns while I was rendezvousing on him. So one of those 20 millimeter bullets left his airplane and went right through my cockpit, right by my head, and went through the windscreen and hit right here. That could have been life number 2 as a Lieutenant J.
Yeah, well, I already wrote down in my notes, that's 2 lives.
Oh, so. You're going to start counting, huh? Okay.
Oh, my God. Oh. This naval aviation thing sounds like a dangerous business. I'm not sure I want to do this, Fig.
Well,
I know, right?
Navy pilots, we had this philosophy, the bad thing's always going to happen to the other guy. It's never going to happen to you.
Right. That's the only way you get in the airplane in the morning.
That's what keeps you exciting. Well, let's see.
All right. Well, gee, wow. Okay. This is crazy. All right. Well, we've got you. I'll tell you what, we'll get into some combat missions here in a second. I want to get one more admin question out of the way, which is how did the call sign Masher come about?
There we go.
I didn't have a call sign going into aviation, but I reported to my first squadron commander of VA-146. By the way, V is Navy and A is attack, and so a light attack squadron VA-146. But my CO looked at my record and says, "Oh, you wrestled at the Naval Academy." He says, "I did too when I was a midshipman." He says, "I'm going to call you Masher." Well, guess what? Here I am
Wow.
a lot of years later, and
Wow.
still all my Navy pilots and friends still call me master. So whatever your CEO sticks you with, you're stuck with.
Yep.
Right. I was
Yeah.
saying earlier, there's a lot worse ways to get a call sign and a lot worse call signs. So
I'm gonna, since we're talking aviation, I'm going to give you. I've always been a good, strong pilot, so I didn't have too many emergencies or things. But one that really is, we call this life number 3, is I got in a dogfight over the Philippines. We were south of the Philippines, and I'm in an A7, and I've had a lot of experience in the A7 Echo, and there it is. And the A146, well, that's nice. So I was flying this, and I got into a dogfight at 33,000 feet with an F-14. Now, the Navy F-14 has these neat swept back wings. They can sweep back the wings mechanically and go fast, or they can stick the wings out and go slow. And it turns out it's a pretty good dogfighter with those wings sticking straight out. Well, I jumped this guy, and I got some good turns on him, and I'm at 33,000 feet, and I'm holding my nose, like this. He's here, and you're kind of leading back here, and I'm holding in my sights, and I'm, wow, I'm just gonna, it's make believe, but I'm pretending like I'm shooting him down, and I watched. And I said, oh, look at that! Those wings are going straight out, and I was fascinated how his wings were moving out. But what I didn't realize was he was going slower and slower, and I was too. And guess what happens? You've heard of an accelerated turn stall?
Yes, sir.
I had an accelerated turn stall that was wham. The bottom wing was working and the top wing stalled, and I flipped into a flat spin at 33,000 feet. Now, if you've ever been and you look down at the airspeed indicator, you're going 0. There is no airspeed.
Yep.
You're falling straight down like a rock and spinning flat like this. So as I went down,
but at least your flight controls don't work.
300-degree circle, and as you go around, you're flat, but nothing's happened. You can't get your nose down. You can't get it up. You can't get air through the engine. And you're going down. And then I start hearing, you've lost it, skipper, eject. You've lost it, skipper, eject. And I don't want to eject.
You've done that before.
I've got too much pride. And anyway, I got finally at about 15,000 feet, I got the nose to start go on down on a circle. Then it'd go up, and then it'd go down a little deeper. And anyway, at 10,000 feet, I got control of the airplane and pulled out at 5,000 feet without ejecting.
Oh.
What was that, number 3 or 4? But
that was at least number 3, possibly 4.
You never want to get in a flat spin.
Yeah.
Flat spins are not fun.
Wow.
I want to reattack something that you said about 20 minutes ago. You said it very fast, but I caught it. And you were talking about early on in Vietnam, you guys were somebody was the flare bird, so they would light it, because this is nighttime, right? You're doing attack missions at night. Somebody drops the flare, and then everybody else goes underneath the flare to bomb using the flare as light, so you can see your target.
You get nice and lit up. Yeah.
Whoever thought that was a good idea? But holy shit!
Well, listen, at the beginning of the air war in North Vietnam, there are a lot of bad ideas. For instance, they were sending A1s. They were sending A1s into North Vietnam against ground targets, and one of the guys in our squad in the VA-145, same air wing, his name was I remember his name was Gary. Right in the very first day, he's making a run on trucks. He took a bullet right through the windshield, and he went straight in, and he died. And what they didn't know in those days was below 3,000 feet in North Vietnam, the sky is full of lead, and lead is your enemy. That's what, and you just don't use slow airplanes like this in North Vietnam. They got missiles, they got heavily defended guns and AAA, they call it, anti-aircraft artillery. And what people started doing, well, here's another example. The first day we were in North Vietnam, the skipper that named me Masher said, "Oh, I've been to this weapons training school run by the Air Force and Eglins Air Force Base, and we have been trained to fly low and fast. We'll be so low and fast that the enemy they can't even get their guns up in time to shoot to us. And we got this new weapon called a snake eye. Well, the snake eye is a bomb, a 500 or 250 or whatever, it's a 1,000-pounder. And this bomb had a fin on it, was like this. When you let it go, it would open like this, and it would drop immediately, and you could hit with pinpoint accuracy on a target. But you had to do it. You had to do it with restricted speed and altitude. You had to be low. Well, guess what? He was teaching this to us. That we'll kill those trucks and all of the enemy supplies coming from Russia, China. We're going to win the war with this new weapon and my tactics that I learned in the Air Force weapons school. Yeah. Well, his first run, he was hit. He pulled up in a big arc like this, rolled over, and then right down into the water, and he died.
Oh boy.
After that, we got smart and we said, okay, nobody below 3,000 feet, no snake eyes. They wired them shut so that they didn't open ever. And we started the air war in North Vietnam. That was January of 1965. We got 1965. We got online, and January of 1966 we started the air war following the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and then that lasted for several years until 1973 when I was released. But I got some more missions. I ended up with 179 combat missions, and my roommates, we were three of us from the Naval Academy. We were all classmates, but we were number 1, 2, and 3 on the ship for number of missions, from all the fighters, everything, because we never turned down a flight. Now, some of your audience might recognize this. What do you call ME? Let's see, minimum essential equipment. Well, that's if you're
MEL.
MEL.
Minimum equipment list. Minimum equipment list.
We would have lieutenant commanders in the squadron, and they'd say, "Oops, the 8-day clock is not working."
Yeah.
And it's nighttime and there's no moon. So they down the airplane, and then myself and my other two roommates, since we were JOs and junior in the squadron, we would be the standbys, in case somebody went down. Well, guess what? The lieutenant commanders didn't like to fly carrier landings at nighttime with no moon.
Weird.
And so the 8-day clock would go down, or at least they said it went down.
Yeah.
And we'd be up there. So we took all of the reserve missions and ended up with the most carrier landings. But my roommate that was right behind me ended up on his 200th mission, was a direct missile hit over Hanoi, and he died 10 days after I was shot down. The third roommate ended up with 450 combat missions. He didn't get shot down.
Holy smokes! Who was that?
But that's the Navy. We usually ended up with 300, 400, 500 missions in ours. We didn't have the Air Force champagne bottle. We didn't get the champagne, and we basically had a philosophy. Well, we'll fly till either the war's over or we're dead. And we lost a lot of good pilots over those years.
Wow.
In POW's terms, of the people who survived the POW experience, of which there were 662 of us survived and got out back to the United States, 500 were aircrew shot down in North Vietnam. We had 500 people shot down. A lot of people dead, but 500 were shot. After we got in Hanoi, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the treatment and the torture went on, if you'd like to hear that.
I'd like to get into that. The one thing I wanted, and you wrote a book called, geez, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me now, and I forgot the title escapes me. It was a Prisoner of War,
Prisoner of
6
War.
years in Hanoi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay.
That's my hands, my drawing of my hands in the hilt cuffs.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and we're going to, for everyone that, go to youtube.com and search for So There I Was and look for this video. Mike Masher is an amazing artist and sketched a bunch, and we're going to put some of these up as we chat about this. Here's a quick question you may or may not be able to answer. You described your injuries, which just it makes my skin crawl to hear.
It sounds
Okay, it's bad enough having those injuries. Now you got to go be a POW for a few years and face torture on top of that. Did anybody make it into prison camp in relatively good health? These ejections, you get beat up.
If you had control, your airplane was steady. You could, you put your arms in the right position, legs in the right position, and pull the right levers, and you could pretty well escape uninjured.
Okay.
But keep in time, most of us were shot down, and a lot of us were tumbling through space in odd positions. So we had a lot of serious injuries.
Yeah.
And it's just, everybody was different. 500 aircrew, and I got to live with some of those guys, and we didn't get any medical treatment. When they torture your injuries. They're brutal. These are communist torture guys that are going to extract information out of you. And of the 500 people in there, 28 of us tried to stick to name, rank, and serial number and died in torture. So they killed 28 pilots up there. So we have their bodies back now. I lasted 3 days, and my back was broken. I think my neck was broken. I couldn't move my head, and the left arm was already broken and dislocated. And in torture, they dislocated the right shoulder and the right elbow.
Jeez.
And I laid on the floor. That's me trying to relocate my left arm. I was on that stretcher there that you just saying, and I laid there for 15 days. After 3 days, I broke and finally went past name, rank, and serial number, but I wouldn't write anything down. So then I went another 12 days on that little stretcher you have drawing there. I couldn't move, and I was in delirium. I had to hold my left arm was broken. I had to hold it with my right arm 24 hours a day. So I'd hold it until I passed out, but then I'd pass out and I wake up screaming with the pain in my arm. So I held my own arm for 15 days and went into delirium with no sleep for 15 days. Nobody to help me go to the bathroom. No help. Just them, working me over like this every day, trying to get me to write something. And finally, after 15 days, I figured I was going to die. So I broke and I wrote down some lies on a piece of paper for him. And I remember his words. He says, now you have signed your confession. Now you will die. And but they left me alone. They threw me in a cell on my back. And then immediately I went into delirium and with dysentery, where I'm pooping 30 and 40 times a day and nobody to help me. It was a mess. And it took me 2 minutes to get strong enough to sit up and to where I could sit up and I couldn't walk because my leg was out of place. Finally, a guard helped me get my leg back in place, and then they tied a board behind my leg to hold it. I had no idea it was hurt so bad, but it was just a floppy piece of meat.
Yeah,
and,
nothing. Was there nothing really holding the bones together? You had torn
nothing.
two major ligaments.
Yeah, it was just a floppy piece of meat, but they got it lined up and they got a board. I tied a board to it and like a stick behind my knee. And that was the only medical help I got for 6 years.
Oh my God.
Now, there were people like Bill Metzger. Now, he was shot down. He was shooting down a MiG. And here's your famous thing. Here I was, and then but behind him was another MiG. And he didn't know it, but he got shot down by a MiG, and he was blown out of the cockpit. And when he was captured, part of his hip was shot away. His what's the big bone underneath your butt? What's that?
The femur.
The femur.
Yeah, the femur. His femur was broken in half. it was out, and half his butt was shot away. It was an open wound, and underneath his arm, this part was missing. This muscle it was shot away. It was open. So he after they quickly broke him and then threw him in a cell to see if he lived, and then with no medical treatment. So here you have an open wound with a broken femur, and he did get a roommate that helped him. What they did, they filled up a bucket full of water. We use these buckets as our waste thing. So all our human waste went into buckets, which we would dump out each morning. But they took this bucket and they pinned his leg against the wall. So he laid on his back for months and didn't move his leg for months. And he laid there in the nude. The maggots came in, and the maggots were cleaning out the wound. These guys were smart enough to keep the maggots because it eats the dead flesh. Yeah. And after several months, many months, his leg healed, the humor, with a 4-inch overlap. Right?
Shit. Wow.
So then
the bone healed back together, but offset.
So anyway, his leg, and finally after several years, the maggots went away and it pretty well healed up. Well, he had a 4-inch short leg, but he exercised with all the rest of us. He lived across the hall from me. Well, when we got released in 1973, he came up to me in postgraduate school and said, "Mike," he says, "how tall are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm 5'10". And he says, "Well, I'm 6'1". But he says, "The Navy offered me this operation. They can take 1 inch out of my good leg and put it back together and shorten it. And then, they can get that back together, but I'll be 4 inches short." He says, "But they offered to take 4 inches out of the other leg so that I'm the same height on my legs, the same length," because he had this big shoe with a big 4-inch heel. He hated it.
Right.
And he says, "But when they're finished, I'll be 5'10". What's it like to be 5'10"? I told him,
what's it like to be 5'10"?
I'm taller than some and shorter than some. But anyway, he took the operation. Got back on flight status and finished out a Navy career and retired as a Navy pilot. And guess what his nickname is? Shorty.
Too tall. Shorty.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, we had a lot of guys like that. Now my arm, I had the same. I call them the John McCain arms. He was in an A4. It breaks his shoulders. Bifolder. Most of the A4 pilots had broken shoulders. As you remember, that cockpit was so tight that if you're touching it, it broke your arms. But we had some really serious injuries. And then you had, on top of serious injuries, then you had torture injuries. Now, CAG Stockdale was one of the worst. He not only was all broken up.
Was he the CAG when he got captured?
Yeah, CAG Stockdale. Yeah, we called him CAG. That's what we all called him.
Holy.
He was an Air Wing commander. So he was a senior ranking Navy pilot in the Vietnam experience for many years. But as a senior officer, they tried the hardest to break him. We figure he was broken over 20 times to a blithering pulp idiot, trying to lie his way out of things. But he would always come back and say, "Guys, I'm sorry," with the TAP code. We're going to talk about the TAP code and communication.
Oh, yeah.
He'd come back and say, "I'm sorry, I broke, but don't you guys break." He said, if they break you, resist only to the point of not losing control, like a limb or an eye or an ear or something serious. Break, give them the minimum information you can, and then come back to bounce again and resist again and make them break you again. And he was our leader for advice and policy for years in the toughest of times. And I got to live across the hallway from him, but never got to know him personally. But I did get to know him with the TAP code. I think we ought to talk about that TAP code.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get there. I have another question though before this. So these injuries and the torture are unspeakable.
Oh, they are.
How did you learn to live with the pain? I mean, I get a headache, I go grab an aspirin. how did you learn to cope with the pain? Oh, we'll get to the tap code here in a minute. But I mean, the drawings from your book, I've got one up now where they're helping you practice your morning yoga, as you put it earlier. This is, I mean, this is not how animals of prey treat their,
that particular drawing depicted what we humorously called the Vietnamese rope trick. And the Vietnamese rope trick, they rotate your arms from behind your back over until your shoulders dislocate.
Oh,
and if your shoulders don't dislocate, they tie a rope around your wrist and hang it over a hook in the ceiling and hoist you up and let you hang until your shoulders dislocate.
Oh.
And believe me, the pain that you mentioned is so intolerable that you want to die. And I remember I kind of prayed that I want to die.
Yeah, I believe it.
But they wouldn't let you die, and unless they accidentally had your mouth stuffed with rags and you suffocated.
Yeah.
So, but the pain is indescribable. For my first 2 months, I lived with this terrible, terrible pain. I couldn't sleep. I was in and out of delirium, and I couldn't hold my wrist like this. This is how I held my broken arm. And if I fell asleep and dropped it, it
woke you up.
Wake me up screaming.
Yeah.
But guess what?
Screaming right now.
I was. This is in the month number 2. I hadn't sat up for a month. They would bring me in a bowl of rice every day, and 2 bowls of rice kept me alive. And I lost 50 pounds real quickly over the next few months. But here's what I heard, and I want to give you guys a test. I want to see if you respond.
Okay.
Let me try that again. Nobody's responding.
I can't. If you're tapping,
maybe tap your mic.
Okay, Mike. I don't have a mic anyway.
Okay, tap your computer then.
I'm tapping shave and a haircut.
Oh yeah.
Oh. What's the response?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Anybody that responds to that rhythm, shave and a haircut, 2 bits, has got to be an American, because that's an American rhythm. Shave and a haircut, 2 bits, and that's been around since maybe you guys are too young to know that.
No, I remember that growing up as a kid. Yeah.
All us old guys, we knew that. So what happens is you tap on the wall, and if somebody comes back, tap, tap, you know that they're an American. If somebody comes back with tap, 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 you know that that's an enemy behind the line. So, what you do is you authenticate that it's an American, and then we had this code where from World War II, one of our guys had remembered from an Air Force survival school, Siri, that if you leave out the letter K, you have a block of 5 by 5. So the letter C is first group, then A, B, C. And the letter F would be tap, tap, tap. And then my name we learned the names by memorization, and we used initials. So my name is MM in the prison system. It'd be tap, 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 Mike McGrath. So you learn to tap very rapidly. Like today is TD, tomorrow is TM, that is TT, the word the is T, YD is yesterday. And in a little pilot humor here, just like Al Gore, we invented texting, and we didn't know we had.
Right. Yes.
So here we are abbreviating things, and you're doing everything the kids are doing today with texting.
LOL. Yeah.
You guys are way ahead of your time, man.
That's a pilot story. There, this is a no shitter that we invented texting.
Yeah,
but
you did.
But you get real fast, and you find out you can't finish a word. So if you got your ear in the wall and he's got his ear in the wall, and you tap, you get 3 letters into the word, and he says tap tap, which is Roger. And then you get 2 letters into the next one, tap tap, which is Roger. In other words, he understands the word before you're able to complete it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the faster you go, and the better you get, you can have like a conversation. You learn about the other guy's, his wife, his kids, his family. everything
So,
about him.
were you aware of the tap code before you were captured? Was this taught to you in a SEER school or anything like that?
No,
or-
there's to talk about the books. There's about 200 books either by or about us, and one of them is by Smitty Harris, who just recently died a couple of months ago. Smitty Harris wrote a book called Tap Code, and what is all this about it. Smitty was in an Air Force survival school, and he remembered a World War II prisoner in the school explaining how the tap code was used in the Stalag Lufts of Germany in World War II.
Okay.
And he was lucky he was able to pass it to 5 guys of the early, these are early shoot down guys, 1964, 65, really early, 8 and 9 year type guys. And they got the word out, and they end out that everybody that came in was somehow or other you got contact and you taught them the tap code. No matter, sometimes we'd pass notes in the rice or notes typed in the toilet area underneath a crap bucket. But somehow we taught everybody the tap code, and that communication allowed us to organize and resist for 6 years. One of this is that.
I'm looking for the one where there it is. Yeah. A way to try and get under the door, I guess, is the sketch.
We lived on the floor. We peeked under doors. We peeked through cracks. We watched those guys, and one guy had to be under the door watching for guards while his roommates are tapping on the wall and community organizing. And here's how you could use the tap code. Pilot humor. We all know what pilot humor is because we are pilots.
Because we're 12. We're all 12-year-olds at heart.
Yeah, we are. We're just young kids. But there was this one. There was eight of our cells in this one camp, and one of the guys in the cell was called out, and he went into a quiz Q. We called it Q, which is short for interrogation quiz. Okay. So he went into the quiz, which was an interrogation in which the guards
quiz. Wow.
The guys that speak broken English, we know they had British instructors because they used words like schedule. Where'd you learn to say schedule? And the answer is in shul. That's another pilot joke if you catch it.
Yep.
So anyway, so that's where they must have learned to say schedule in British language shul. But this guy was called in, and they want to talk because they want to improve their English. Well, we don't want to talk because we're prisoners. And our job is to resist, and they get all mad, but they want to talk. And so this guy, the guard, this office, only the officers spoke any English. Guards never spoke a word. But anyway, this guy's question, he says, well, tell me about your house. What do you have in your house? And this guy's thinking real quick, and he says, well, in my house in the United States, we have an electric banana peeler. And the guard said, "Oh, what's that?" He said, "Well, in America, we never touch bananas. They are forbidden. We must put them in an electric banana peeler and peel the banana with electricity." So the guards, they write this all down. He was returned, and as soon as he got in his cell, guess what? Tap, 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 tap. And it went from room to room, and it was just like a wildfire through the camp about the electric banana peelers. So the next guy gets called in. And he was a much richer pilot. He had 2 banana peelers, one in the kitchen and one in the bedroom. Well, by the end of the day, people had 10 and 20 banana peelers in their house. And but the Vietnamese, they're writing this all down as gospel, Yeah. Everybody's saying the same story. They must have electric banana peelers. So
it's a thing. It's a thing in America, electric banana peelers.
Yeah, that's typical of pilot humor and how we applied it against the enemy whenever we could and threw it back in their face.
Wow.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Yeah, he's got a picture. Yeah, there's Sticks and or Bago in the background. They have a picture of a banana peeler up. They're doing it. Beautiful. So, oh man, that is amazing. This.
Well, let me kind of. I lived in 5 different camps. And we all got the same treatment. And there's so many stories I could tell you. We just don't have the time. My book is still in print after 50 years. It's at Amazon.com if you want a copy. And send it to me and I'll sign it. As soon as I sign it,
absolutely.
You can put it back on eBay at $300. So you can get your money back. Okay.
Hey.
But let me just say that here we are. We're all Air Force and Navy with a sprinkling of Marine pilots up there. We're all air crew. No Army guy ever was captured in North Vietnam, and we became the tightest squadron fraternity that you can imagine. So here we are today. We're all still friends. Our best friends, the people we trust the most, are the people we lived with in Hanoi, and you learn. You live in your underwear with people for years, and that's you have to go to the bathroom in the same bucket, and somebody has to sleep next to the bucket, and you become very close friends.
Oh yeah.
But in my 5 camps, the one that was most interesting was at the end of the war. When the war was heating up, they moved 209 of us up to China, and we were in the China border in a camp called Dog Patch. And again, our humor, we had a vote, and finally the vote was, we're going to call this place Dog Patch. And it was a pitch black camp under a triple canopy right up against the Chinese border, because they knew our rescue teams, like the Sante people, would not come get us up there. And there was 9 people per room, and we had rats, and we had crates, bamboo vipers, and cobras up there. We killed in our rooms. Luckily, nobody ever got bit by. None of our POWs died by snake bite. Several guards died by snake bite because they had to patrol at nighttime, and sometimes a snake would get them. But that was the room. It was so dark we couldn't see each other. It was pitch black. So I had a guy moved in with me, and I talked to him for 3 days, and all of a sudden he came in and jerked him out, and I never got to see his face. I didn't know what he looked like until we got back home a year later. But so that was my darkest, most dreary time. And the living conditions, can you guys imagine this? I mean, there's so many things. Okay, you got to go to the bathroom. Okay, and you got diarrhea or whatever. Well, we got 1 piece of toilet paper per month. So if you unfold, it was a big piece of brown paper like this. Think of unfolding a brown grocery sack from Safeway, and you got it. Maybe it's 24 inches by 12 inches, and you get 1 of those per month.
Wow.
So you get very good. You tear off a piece 1 square inch at a time.
Just what you need.
And,
Wow.
and you wipe your butt judiciously, because you're not going to get any more toilet paper for the month. Now, we use that toilet paper for passing notes and education, languages. We learned from each other. I learned, my first roommate spoke German. So for 2 years, I learned German without ever having seen a book or a pencil or paper. And now I can sing more songs than, Christmas songs. And luckily he was a German descent, stationed in Germany. So he had really good German, but he knew German drinking songs. So now I can sing German drinking songs about drinking beer in the
right
things. And there was, by the way, there were 21 escape attempts up there. The guys got out, but are all recaptured. Well,
did anyone? Oh, okay. I was going to say, did anyone make it? Where are you going to go?
Made it out of North Vietnam. Only Dengler and Klusman made it out of Laos. Those are the only 2 Navy guys that made it out of Laos, and then 30 guys made it out of South Vietnam. So there's only 32 guys that escaped in the war. But anyway, we attempted them. One of the on May 10th of 1969. 2 guys, Dermisi and Atterbury, were Air Force captains, went out the roof and the cell beside me in his camp. And we heard them go out through the roof and moving the tiles. And we said, well, we're going to get tortured tomorrow. We might as well keep playing bridge. And we didn't play bridge with normal cards. We made our own cards with layers of toilet paper and used rice, like a rice glue. And then we took stolen razor blades and cut out numbers out of their propaganda, like a 4 and an H would be the 4 hearts, and you would glue it in place. And you shuffle them very carefully so you don't shuffle off the numbers. But anyway, we played seven rubbers of bridge that night until the sun was coming up. Sure enough, the sun came up. They were counting heads. They'd already figured out somebody escaped, and the whole camp got tortured that summer. And that's some of my drawings in there of me getting beat with a fan belt. That's from that summer of '69 and torture.
Oh,
so we Well, I'm ready for a question. What questions you have?
Well, yeah,
Well, all right.
yeah,
Where do we
well,
start?
Well, first of all, I think Sticks can do this. Just a heads up for our listeners, we're going to take a minute here to do an admin thing because my media assets are frozen up and I can't talk about our sponsor. But I would like to talk more about this and find out about how you learned the tap code, how fast you got at it, those sorts of things, and a couple other things. Like I have a question about Admiral Stockdale, that sort of thing. But I'd like to do that after we take a moment to talk about our sponsor. So there I was, realizing that most custom metal you see online is about as custom as airline coffee. And then I found DCArtworks.net. If you've ever ordered something that looked cool on a website and showed up feeling thin, flimsy, or suspiciously lightweight, you already understand why this sponsor matters. DC Artworks is American-made, veteran-owned, and run by Derek, a guy who cuts metal the right way, CNC cut, hardened steel, followed by hands-on finishing. Translation, the computer gives you aerospace-level precision and the human gives it soul. No bent sheet metal, no stamped junk. No, don't hang this where people can't touch it. Instructions included in the box here. And here's the part that separates DC Artworks from almost everyone else. 95% of what they build is custom. Not a pick a font and we'll engrave it. I mean real custom. Your idea, your wall, your squadron, your call sign, your business. The design library on DCArtworks.net is updated constantly, but that's just the inspiration. The real magic happens when you contact Derek and say, here's what I'm thinking, because he can scale from small personal pieces to large commercial installations without breaking a sweat. I've got a set of Naval aviator wings nearly 2 feet across, and they're genuinely stunning. People don't walk past them. They stop. They lean in. They ask, where do those come from? That's the reaction you want. DC Artworks also specializes in powder coating and multi-material engraving, which means layered finishes, depth, and contrast that actually look better in person than they do online. He's a military GPC vendor, offers bulk and repeat discounts, and is consistently one of the lowest priced vendors in the space for this level of quality. And because you listened to So There I Was, Derek made it simple. Go to dcartworks.net, use the code STIW to get 20% off every order forever, even if another discount's already running. Nobody does that, but Derek does, because he's that kind of a great guy who wants to make you happy with what you envision for your wall. It's not a sale. It's a standing invitation. So here's your move. Go to dcartworks.net right now, browse for about 90 seconds, then email Derek and commission something that actually deserves wall space. Fair warning, you won't unsee the blank spots on your wall the same way ever again. And thanks to dcartworks.net for sponsoring this episode. Wow. I'm sitting here in awe.
I know.
I'm right.
I feel the same
I'm
way.
almost in tears. Captain, what you have given to us, to this country, is more than any country has a right to ask of it. And you've done it with good humor and grace, and you've managed to help keep the fraternity of former POWs together. And I'm just humbled to be in your presence. So let me state that up front.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto.
I can't imagine what you endured. It's beyond the scope of human imagination.
Let me just say something here. You know,
Yeah.
we just did our duty. We were all Navy and Air Force pilots, and we were well trained, and we were trying to intercept all those lines of supply and POL products coming down to support the war, and we just all did our duty. So none of us call each other the heroes or anything. And just let me tell you a couple of interesting things. A lot of our guys had served in World War II or Korea. And 95% of us stayed in the military after we got out. We ended up with something like 27 admirals and generals. We ended up with 8 honor in our group, 8 honor of Medal of Honor recipients. We ended up with doctors, lawyers, politicians, presidential candidates, vice presidential candidates, and surgeons. We ended up with none of us had PTSD, which is one of the biggest frauds going on in our country right now. And in other words, the Navy and the Air Force really treated us well. We got back in 73, excuse me, February, March 1973, and it's Operation Homecoming. They were flown out by the C-141s right out of Hanoi. And the Army and the Navy, they treated us with respect. And Stockdale's words to us back in the thing was we withheld. His motto was return with honor. No matter what they do to you, return with honor, which we did. And the Navy and the Air Force gave us all jobs that we were qualified for. So what do you want to do? And if we'll get you in it, we will. I wanted a postgraduate school. Other guys wanted to go right back and fly. And even the guys that were non-pilots, like backseaters and weapon systems, if they wanted to go to flight school, the Navy and the Air Force sent them to flight school and made them pilots. They really treated us well, and that's why 95% of us stayed in for careers to this day. Now, and we all got educated too. We used each other as a database. Like after the escape, I ended up with a guy, Phil Butler, who spoke fluent Spanish. Guess what? After 4 years of Spanish, I am now fluent in Spanish. I was so fluent in Spanish that I took the State Department language test. I aced it. They said, you can do anything you want to, Chinese, Bulgarian, Slovakian. What do you want to speak? I said, I want to speak Spanish. And they said, this gets into pilot subterfuge. They said, well, how many years of Spanish you had? I said, none. How many classes you had? I said, none. How many books in Spanish you run? None. And they said, well, you got to take the full 6 months course at DLI, Defense Language School.
Yep.
And
Monterey. Yeah.
There's two. There's one in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
So I attended the one in Washington, D.C., which is equivalent to Monterey. Same people.
Okay.
Same course. And so I had 6 months of Spanish and polished up my Spanish, went to South America, flew all over from Chile to Panama in a C-12 and served 3 years speaking my Hanoi University Spanish. Never having seen a book. And working with presidents, generals, and admirals, all in Hanoi University Spanish. So we didn't just sit there and do nothing. We educated our brains. We memorized everything. I memorized every POW in the system. I had 350 names on my memory list. There's Will Abbott, Bob Abbott, Joe Abbott, Elva Alvarez, Atterbury, Austin, Bailey. I got to say them fast, but
yes.
They get in a rhythm, and you can repeat that 10 or 20 times a day, and you can remember everybody in the prison system and every fact about them.
So I've got a question, and I swear this is not a smart ass question. How many former POWs have dementia, Alzheimer's?
Well, at this age,
yeah. Well, that's what. Yeah, I get it. Your memory skills are off the charts.
Yeah, that's where he's going with it. Not it's the opposite of having.
But you got to remember, they're guys just like you. They're smart. And one thing, when you're in Hanoi, you don't have television, you don't have a newspaper, you don't have books, you don't have a wife, you don't have a girlfriend. There's nobody to distract you. So your mind is spinning 24 hours a day. So if you grab a fact, tapping on the wall, if you grab something, you memorize it for life. And so I can still remember the conversations I had, the books that I had that we talked about. Shakespeare, I learned Shakespearean soliloquies, Dangerous Dan McGrew. You learn things that you're stuck with them for life. And when I got
whether you want them or not, I guess.
Yeah, whether you want them or not. And
okay.
So
Masher.
To begin with, we're all pilots. We're all smart enough to get to that stage, so we got wings. So there's probably a lot of geniuses in our midst that we don't even know about. And there's some really smart people give me a. I'm going too fast.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, let me throw a name at you, Masher.
Yes.
let me throw a name at you, and it's pure coincidence if you actually know who this individual is. He was in the, correct me if I'm wrong, repeat, but he was also in the Hanoi Hilton. It was
157. Yep.
yeah, Bill Robinson. He was an Air Force enlisted crewman.
Well, he was across the hall from me, and Bill Robinson was an Air Force
front
crewman.
door.
Yeah, and he after the escape in 1969, he and his roommates were being tortured, and I was across the hall from him being tortured. And we get this tap of our community, and they're all Lieutenant JGs over there. And they were 03s and below in this particular camp. There was about over 80 of us in this camp, and these guys said, "Hey, we've got Art Cormier and Bill Robinson here in the room, and they're going through the same torture and the same trouble with the rest of us, and they're doing just as good a job as us. We'd like to give them a battlefield commission." Well, I was living with Connie Troutman, who was a captain in 03, who had started in World War II. That's how old he was.
Oh my gosh.
He was 41 and I was 27 when we became roommates. And he was the old man of the camp, but he'd been passed over for like 20 years. And he was the oldest flying captain flying F-105s in the Air Force. So he had 100 missions in Korea in F-86s. He had a lot of missions in an F-105, and he shot down, captured. He was shot in the chute. So when I lived with him, he had a bleeding leg. He had an open wound in his leg. And my other roommate was a Mormon. A guard had shot him in the back of the head, and it opened his skull and bounced off his skull. And he had this open wound. So I'm looking at his scalp, or his skull, and he had, an infected open wound. So I got Connie Troutman with a bleeding leg. I got the hard-headed Mormon. I know that's why he survived. He's a hard-headed Mormon. Jay Head, he's got an open wound. And anyway, so Connie, senior ranking officer, says, "Okay, devise a commissioning, give them an officer commissioning course." With training as an officer, and we'll give him the commission, and then we'll let the Air Force test it when they get out. So they did that. Now that's 1969. We didn't get out until 73. Well, of course they get out, and here's these three enlisted men, Robinson's, Cormier, and who's the other guy you guys know. So anyway, we presented it to the Air Force. Well, the chief of staff of the Air Force turned it down. Then we had Flynn, the full bolt colonels. We had Flynn. Colonel Flynn, our senior ranking officer of all the POWs, the entire system, he took it to the Secretary of the Air Force. The Secretary of the Air Force turned it down. Then he took it to the Department of Defense. They turned it down. Then he did the unthinkable. He took the three guys, this commissioning thing, to the President Nixon.
Yes.
And he briefed Nixon on this and said, "These guys did the same thing as the other officers in camp, and we think they should get a battlefield commission." And Nixon said, "Approved, do it." And all three of them got commissioned. They got the same data rank. One of them, he was up for E9, so he put off his commission until late in 1973 when we got out, and got promoted to E9, and then he accepted his commission, but the Air Force backdated it to the other two back in April of 73. So the three of them finished out a Air Force career and retired with ranks, officer ranks, after 20 years. So
that's outstanding.
How's that for a full answer?
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. And I had to ask, and I was not disappointed. So thank you.
Yeah. Bill Robinson's a friend of mine. Yes. And
can you've said a couple times, lived across the hall, so that sort of thing. Can you please describe what the prison was like, and how many prisons were you in? I mean, I'm sure it was more than one, right?
5 camps.
Right.
Was that five camps? 5 different prisons? Is that what you meant by 5?
Yeah.
Well, I was in 5 different prisons. Of course, the Hanoi Hilton, the one that very early was named the Hanoi Hilton, and which was the main prison downtown.
What was it like? Was it crappy wooden huts with a tin roof? Was it?
No, that was crappy places would be down South Vietnam and over in Laos. They were mostly sheds, buildings with tile roofs and enough to keep the water off of you during rainstorms and keep you
Okay.
dry with a tile floor. So we never had a bed, so you either sleep on the tile floor or a rice mat like you find on the beach in Hawaii. That was your rice mat. And
Okay.
if you're lucky, they give you a bedboard. It elevates you 2 or 3 inches off the floors, so the rats can run underneath, and they can make love underneath your bed while you're trying to sleep. They're squeaking and they're making funny little noises. But so you sleep with you sleep with one blanket. You get 2 pair of underwear and 2 t-shirts to wear for years. It's icy cold in the wintertime. You never see a book, a paper, a pencil, a nail clipper. You don't see anything. You can't even have a stick to clean your fingernails. So, and you think about 6 years of no dental care. We all had terrible dental diseases, periodontal diseases when we returned after 6, 7, 8 years with no care. You never see vitamins or proteins or meat. Never saw an ice cube or an egg. Never had and you shave with one. They made you shave because they didn't like the French with beards. So you have one razor blade for 80 people in the camp. So 80 people use the same dull razor blade, and you use Russian lye soap. We get a block of every 3 months. You get a block of Russian lye soap, which is like ashes and really rough, tough stuff. And you got cold well water. And I never looked in the mirror for 6 years. When I finally looked in the mirror in 1973, I said, "Holy shit,
who's that guy?
Who is that guy?" Yeah,
Right.
So anyway, but so you're in the blind. You got to shave, basically you jerk that dull razor blade.
Pull the whiskers out.
You pull the whiskers out, and you kind of have to go a little short, things like this, and to pull the whiskers out. So it's miserable. Now life. You never see a book or a paper or pencil, or you can't communicate with your family. And so you got their propaganda. So they give you a piece of propaganda and we try to decipher it and say, well, they said they shot down 24 airplanes today. Well, maybe they damaged one. So we're often trying to outguess their propaganda. And it's all over the world, in Russia and North Korea and everywhere. Their propaganda is just, everything's exaggerated. And it's just the opposite, usually the opposite of what the truth is.
Sure.
So, and you get 2 bowls of rice a day, 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. And you get, along with the bowl of rice, you get a bowl of cooked cabbage or cooked kohlrabi or cooked, stewed pumpkin or squash. And if they really ran out of food, we had swamp grass, weeds. They would boil weeds, and it was so bitter. We called it bitter greens. There's the bowl, and
Wow.
And there's the weeds up there on that plate, and you got that twice a day. So everybody lost weight. And of course there's worms in there sometimes.
Yeah.
One time I did get fish heads. I got a fish head and some rice, and the guys wouldn't eat it. And I said, "Shit, I'm not going to go back home and tell folks that I turned down fish heads and rice." So I ate the fish head and the rice, and it was pretty good. You suck the eyeballs out and suck all the bones clean, and then you end up with a little pile of bones from the fish head.
Wow.
But when we had open boils and infections, and if you cut anything, if you picked a hangnail, it became infected. If you picked a toe and picked your toenail, it became infected. Everything became infected, no matter what. It was, you were lucky if a medic came by and you could show him your infections, and he'd leave you a tincture of iodine ball to put on an infection. Well, by this time, what we would do is we would get a piece of plastic, and we would get the iodine balls they'd leave, and we would make our own pens out of bamboo slivers, like a crow's quill, we could take a razor blade, a stolen razor blade, and make a real nice quill pen with iodine. You can write a whole book with one little cotton ball with iodine. You can write an entire book with that on toilet paper. So we studied languages, we studied engineering, architecture, mathematics. We studied everything. Now, the biggest rooms, after the Sante raid in November 20th, 1970, I was in a camp, one of the camps, the outlying camps. There was about 69 of us in that camp. And the Sante raid happened about 10 miles down the road. So I could see that night the Sante raid going on with the glows on the horizons and the missiles going off. And we didn't know what was going on that night, but we knew something big was going on because they blanked out the lights in our camp and all pointed guns in the windows and made us sit on our beds through the night until the next day with a gun pointed at us. They said, "Do not move." Well, if you have a gun pointed on you and they say, "Don't move," you don't move. And it turned out that was the Sante raid, which the camp was empty. They were in the next cell next to me. There was about a 15-foot wall between the Sante raiders in my camp and us. And we couldn't communicate because we couldn't overcome that 15-foot wall without them seeing us. But those Sante prisoners had been moved during the summer, like I was, May of 1970, to that camp. But they didn't start the Sante raid planning until about July or August, after the POWs had been moved. So their intelligence was so far out of date from the day they started planning till the day they executed with Bull Simons. There was nobody in that camp up there. I've been there twice. I've been back to Hanoi 3 times. I found the prisoner twice up in China. I've taken my wife and my kids up there to show them this dog patch. And I've taken them to Sante, and the Sante is now in ruins. And if you go back today to Hanoi, it is one of the best tourist industry places in the world. I would recommend going to Vietnam over Europe. The Europeans, they've sucked us dry of our money, and they don't like tourists anymore. And it's more fun to go to Vietnam than it is to go to Europe.
Well, been there and amazed by it, to say the least. But I want to ask you, I didn't realize you'd gone back 3 times. Wow. What was it like going back? And 2, you talked about at one point it was a passing comment about one guard helped somebody with an injury. Were there any guards that you trusted? I mean, obviously some of them were sadistic, evil, Satan incarnate.
That's kind of interesting. The guards were not. They were angry. They pouted. They never smiled, and they never helped you. They were just like, wash, quick, back, quick, this quick little commands in and out of your cell. But they were disciplined. They were it was a disciplined army. Their officers gave orders, and for instance, they were never allowed to touch you, slap you, hurt you, or be mean to you, because they didn't have permission to do that. They followed orders. And one example, Jay Hess, one time we were in a room in the annex. And by the way, all these camps are described in my website. And a guard slapped him. Now and we knew that was not bad. That was good. So that was not right. So we complained to the officer in charge that spoke English. Guess what? That guard disappeared for a week. Didn't see him. And after a week, that guard showed up. He opens the doors. We all stood up. He walked right up to Jay, and he said in English, which they couldn't speak English, "I'm sorry." And boom, he went out, slapped the door. So in other words, they had trained him to say, "I'm sorry" in English, and they had ordered him to go in and apologize to my roommate.
Wow.
And that guy never bothered us again after that. So in other words, he was disciplined. He had violated the orders and thing. Now the officers that were interrogating us, trying to break us down to condemn the president, to condemn the war, get a false confession, or tell how many missions we had or tactics. We all lied on that, of course. But those were officers that were interrogating people, and they ordered the enlisted men to torture. So they were under orders to torture if they were supervised. Kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's totally crazy.
But in other words, that they, the officers are always dressed, no rank. You can never tell a rank on a communist, but
Sure.
you can tell who's who.
Have you met any of them? Any of your captors?
No, there's the rabbit was the most fluent in English and considered himself the most efficient torture guy. Our one DPMO, Defense Prisoner of War Missing Personnel Office, was accounting for people after the end of the war. They did get their government to order the rabbit to attend a meeting with the DPO personnel who were getting the bodies out after the war ended. And he's the only person that they ever got in front of any of our people, official people, government people, with a DPMO and now DPAA, the POW MIA accounting office. He's the only guy, and he just glowered. He wouldn't answer. He hated us so bad. He was a no help in our guys find anything. But the answer is no. We've never met anybody that's from that system or anybody friendly. They're all retired and out to pasture, and
Sure.
all the enlisted men have gone back to their farms and families.
Masher, was the Hanoi Hilton in good shape when you went back? Was it?
It was built 100 years before. It was built in the late 1800s. If you've ever seen the movie Papillon with Dustin Hoffman, that was a mirror image of our prison. So it was built in the 1890s. In Papillon, that prison had the cement slabs with the iron manacles, with the leg irons, which you put your legs in at nighttime. So we slept on those same slabs that Dustin Hoffman slept on.
I'm looking for it. There it is.
There it is. There it is. So when you went back to visit, he's on mute right now.
Yeah, we accidentally muted you. I have no idea how. So if you could unmute, sir. Sorry.
Well,
okay,
so
there.
no,
Okay.
what I meant to ask, or I guess what I should have said was, when you went back as a tourist, did you go? Is it still there? Is it a museum? Is it a tourist attraction for them now?
Yeah, it's a beautiful museum. About 80% of the prison has been destroyed. My old rooms, where most of us were moved after into Camp Unity. We had 350 of us in Camp Unity. Finally, we all got organized in 1971 and 72 until the end. But they tore all that down, and they left the main entrance to Wallow right there. That's a replica of it right there. I was a technical advisor on that set. But that looks like that's either a museum at Pensacola or up in Boston. I'm not sure which one that was. But they made a museum out of it. And of course, they got some propaganda on there, and they have John McCain's picture on there, and they tell how good they treated us. And of course, it's all propaganda.
Sure,
but
yeah.
they did keep the torture room open. We called it the Green Knobby Room, where all of us were tortured, and that was in a section called New Guy Village. We had different sections of the prison we lived in.
New Guy Village.
And they kept that room and with a hook in the ceiling, and I was able to photograph that before they remodeled it and made it into a souvenir shop. So,
oh my gosh!
But that's a good museum. And then if you ever get on a guide, they'll take you to their B-52 boneyard with a lot of airplane parts and B-52 sticking out of John McCain's lake. There's the engine still sticking up in the air out of the lake. But they got a lot of good propaganda.
Sure.
But they leave you alone. You can do anything you want in Vietnam, north or south, and as long as you don't photograph any military base. And nobody is that dumb. So you just follow the rules, and you can use your camera to photograph anything. I've stayed in Chinese junks in the bay down there with all those cars. I've lived out there in those. I've gone up in the mountains to Sapa, which was a French resort. And there's a lot of trekkers over there now. The trails, you can trek from North Vietnam through the Hmong areas all across into Laos and Cambodia, and you can follow trails all over Southeast Asia. and everybody treats you wonderfully. You can make friends. You can have and they're very modern. For instance, when this was 20 years ago when I first got there, over 20, when I first got there, and they opened it up. In the hotel, it was like a 5-star hotel. There was mosquito nets. They feed you big breakfast. You take a lot of food with you for lunch. All you can eat for breakfast, and it was $50 a night, and it still is. Their dong is very, very stable. It's like 2,000 dong per $1. Well, for $1 or 2,000 dong, you can get a beer, you can get a small meal, you can get a taxi cab rider. For $1, you can have the best life you want. In Hanoi. And then it's always fun to get up in the morning and go to the morning markets and see how everybody's selling their everything from worms and crabs and fish to meats and flowers, and you see how the Asians live, and everybody in their bicycles and their motorcycles. It's really a fascinating place to visit.
Okay, next question. Were you
you
ever concerned when you were there that when there were bombing raids on the north allowed, that you guys were going to get bombed by our own guys?
Yeah.
Did that bombs ever get close?
No, we knew our guys knew where we were, so we weren't worried about that. But I was up by China, so I'd never heard of B-52. I never heard a bomb in that Christmas bombings of 1972. So there was 209 of us up there in kind of this triple canopy jungle prison, and we had no idea what was going on, except all of a sudden the Vietnamese are being nice to us. They started giving us cans of Russian meat, and they're giving us Russian candy bars, and they're smiling, and we would say, well, when we go home? They say, no, you never go home, you die here. And then they'd smile, and we'd say, no, we go home. They say, no. But what we didn't know was the B-52s were bombing at that time. And in the prisons itself, our guys were up in the windows, watching the B-52s that were shot down, and, wings and fireballs falling out of space. 10 B-52s crashed around Hanoi. And we ended up with 52 B-52 prisoners in the Hanoi Hilton. I wasn't with them, but our guys that were in the windows cheering that on were ecstatic, and nobody was worried about dying. The Vietnamese were all they got in trenches and were all hiding, but the Americans were all up in the windows cheering. So it was and from what I heard, nobody was worried about getting hit. But the bombs were close. I mean, it shook. The ceiling plaster would fall down on you, and the doors would fall off. It was very violent with the B-52s bombing up there.
Okay, next question. Prior to you getting shot down on that fateful day in let's see, it was
65.
June of 1967. Were you flying 2 missions a day, a mission every other day? What was a day in the life?
Well, for the Navy pilots, it was a short trip. Air Force pilots had to fly several hours from Thailand, and it was a long day for an Air Force pilot. Navy, you flew 2 missions a day, and every once in a while you'd be lucky and get 3 missions a day. So we would take off. We would take off. Yeah, we would take off, and we were only 10 minutes from the coast. You could see the coast from the carrier. You take off and rendezvous, and boom, you're in there in 10 minutes, fly your mission. Then you're back in holding. And so they were like 45 minutes to an hour missions. So you'd land, go down, get some lunch, and then go back for a night. So you'd fly 2 missions a day or 2 night missions a day. And the night missions, the carriers, we operated 24 hours a day. You split your squadron in half. So half the maintenance crew works days, and half the maintenance crews and the bomb loaders work nights. So, and then all the pilots, you split them up 50-50. So you're either flying 2 missions during daytime or 2 missions during nighttime.
Okay. Any concern back then with when you were going up, bombing bridges or whatever in the north with MiGs? Any concern getting jumped by MiGs?
They were up there.
Did you see MiGs?
I heard they called one on my tail once, but I had the nose down going to the coast as fast as I could. because I was an attack pilot with 50 rounds in an A-4, and I was no match for a MiG. So I got out of there as soon as I heard MiG. I turned and ran as fast as I could.
Yeah.
Time to go
I didn't
east.
want to see a MiG.
Right.
That's the only MiG I knew that was even close to me, was somebody that said was on a vector towards me. I wisely got home.
What did hit you? Do you know?
What's that?
Was it
What
AAA?
what
Is that
did
what
take
got
you down? Was it AAA? Was it a missile,
me,
a surface to air missile?
I was between San Juan. I was down by AAA. There was no missiles in the air, no MiGs in the air. That day it was AAA. So who knows what caliber, but they hit me. After I pulled out, I dropped my bombs and I was pulling out ready to jink, but they got me just as I was starting to jink.
Should have zigged when you zagged.
Yeah. But you have to laugh for it. Here's a little bit of pilot knowledge for you. I zigged when I should have zagged.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if I had zagged instead of zigged, I'd probably be dead. I would have made the
fair
bad
enough.
choice.
Yeah.
So I'll say, well, I made the right decision. I zigged when I should have zagged. And we'll just leave it at that. So, and we had a lot of, I had one roommate, an Air Force guy who was in there, and he says, I can't remember a thing. I woke up, I was surrendering. They had tortured me. I was on my knees with my hands over my head. And I was saying, I'll talk. And that's all I remember. Well, years later, about 5 years later, a guy comes in and says, oh, I was flying the day you were shot down. And he said, well, how did I get shot down? And he said, they didn't remember a thing. He says, well, you took an atoll right up your tailpipe and it blew you up. We wrote you off as dead. We thought you were dead because we saw your airplane blow up.
Oh,
so he was evidently knocked unconscious, blown out of the airplane, and woke up, several days later in a torture room. So that was one of my roommates. So all our roommates, I had all these stories, and they were in my head. So that's what I tried to draw in my book, is what my roommates told me about.
So at one point you talked about being, when you learned the TAP code, you realized you were not alone anymore. So how long were you alone? When were you first put with a roommate, and what was the maximum number of you in a given cell at the same time?
I said, after 15 days, they got me to write them a false statement. They moved me into a room solitary, and I was only there like a day or two, and I hear the tap on the wall. So it took them a month to teach me the tap code, because remember, I'm flat on my back. I'm tapping on the wall like this, over my head, and the wall's right here, and they very painstakingly. It took them a month to teach me to tap, and I finally understand what they were doing and how they organized it, and then I could tap with them. And those guys had been there 2 years before me. They were 18.
So that's like a baby learning a new language.
Yeah, it is a new language, and your communication, but it's really valuable. As a POW, you've got to have support. If you're in there alone and your family doesn't know if you're dead or alive, it'll drive you crazy. You'll do anything to get in touch with another POW, and if another POW knows you're alive, suddenly the weight is off of you. Say, well, maybe someday my family can learn my fate. So it's really important to get a hold of somebody and get into the system.
Okay, I have another question, sir.
Sure. I don't know.
I'm going to start the question with a name, Jane Fonda.
Yeah. Well, I was. She was. Of course, everybody knows that. And when I get asked this, when I give talks, I say, well, she's not worth talking about. Let's talk about something else. Because she's a communist traitor, and what she did was she came up there in the summer of 72. Well, that was the summer I was up in
China, by China,
China's border, and so I did never hear her broadcast, but she made 8 broadcasts in which she told people to desert and cross over to the people's side, and the war is unjust and inhumane and all that, and you guys are bombing dikes, and she did all that propaganda, but I didn't get to hear it. But the other guys had to listen to it. We had a little, each room, each cell and the whole prison system had a little box about this big, and it was a speaker, and they had it wired up high where you couldn't get to it very easily, and you
Sounds
had
like
to
SEER
listen
school.
to their propaganda. 24 hours a day, they would play propaganda. So they played her broadcast in their entirety. Now, an author named Hank Holzer wrote a book about Jane Fonda. And she should have been court-martialed, and she could be for treason. So he writes up an indictment. He's a constitutional lawyer, and he says she could be indicted today. All it would take is an attorney general for the U.S. to sign it, and they could indict her today. So she was bad, and as we know, during that time period.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I remember the story that somebody like handed her a note to bring back. And
yeah, that's all false.
That is false. Okay.
Yeah. If you look on this Snopes, what I think they call it Snopes in the different fact papers.
Yep.
You'll see that thing, that story, and right behind it is my rebuttal to the story. And my rebuttal has been following that story for the last 25 years. In 1999, the story on Jane Fonda and the belt and Sampson, Sergeant Sampson, and all that. That's all made up very cleverly by somebody who put it on the internet, and it's so good you want to believe it. It says, "Oh, that she betrayed POWs." It's all made up, but it's so good. It's been around for 30 years.
Well, right, yeah. And as someone, wasn't it Abraham Lincoln who said if it's on the internet, it has to be true? So
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So anyway, but here's the real story. She did a tour of propaganda in 1972, and she ended up coming to some of the ministries downtown, defense ministries. She never visited the prison. She never went inside of the Hanoi Hilton, for instance, but she did show up in this ministry. Now, one of my classmates, class of 62, was one of the 6 guys that DV went in and grabbed them out of each room, 6 individual rooms, told them to put on their long sleeve shirt. They would do this. That means put on your long shirt. Okay. And they took them downtown, and they walked in, and there was a table, and they were ordered to sit down. So the 6 guys sat down. They didn't know each other, and they were talking, who are you? Who are you across the table? Why are we here? And in walks Jane Fonda. And she did sit down with them for a while, and she did talk to him and say, "How are you doing? Are you okay? And any message I can take to your family?" And my classmate said, "Yeah." He says, "I broke my arm when I ejected in 1971, but my arm is doing much better. It's okay. You can tell my family I'm okay." And she said, "Okay, I'll tell them that." And she did. So basically, she took any message they wanted to send home, and she left. And then they put those guys back in their room. So that was the extent of any interaction with POWs with Jane Fonda. And she writes about it in her book, My Life So Far, which is, to me, is from what I know and talking to the guys, it's accurate. So she, had a lot of words, but she didn't cause anybody any harm.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me just finish to say, I did kind of, we can go back and forth. It's no problem. But after I got my master's degree, see, they wanted to kick me out when I got out in 1973, January, February, March. I got March 4th. We spent 3 days in Clark Air Force Base where we all got emergency. The dentist worked on our teeth because most of our teeth were broken out because there was rocks in the white rice. And when you bite down on a little white rock in the white rice, it breaks out your fillings and breaks off your teeth. So they worked on us for 3 days, day and night, giving us uniforms that fit and shoes that they had gone to your house and your family and gotten the correct shoe size. We had tailors and dentists all over us for 3 days, getting us in good shape to go back and meet our families. So, but what I wanted to say is we all got back, and I got back. The Navy says, well, and they looked at me, they said, we're going to give you a medical discharge for the Navy, and you're going to be making $350 a month for the rest of your life.
Ooh.
Hold on a second.
All that money and
hold on a second. I realized this
too.
was back in 1973, but that just doesn't seem like very much.
Not very much. So I said, no, I'm not going to accept that. I said, at least I want a master's degree. I don't want to get kicked out of the Navy without at least a master's degree. Can you put it off a year? And they said, okay, we can put that off of a year and a half. And I did go up and get my master's degree. Right after I got my master's degree, I got a nice letter. Oh, dear Commander McGrath, Lieutenant Commander McGrath, show up for your medical board. Holy shit. So I had to go to Pensacola and I had to sit.
Got the nammy whammy, didn't you?
Yeah. I walked into this long room and here's a medical board. I mean, it's seated about 8 people and there's a green tablecloth. And you know how they lay all their stripes on the table. So here was gold stripes all across the table with about 6 guys glowering at me. And I said, oh, shit, what do I do? So by this time, I'd made my mind. I said,
I'm thinking you don't much care about a few stripes across the table after 6 years in Vietnam, Hanoi.
So what are you going to do? Send me to Hanoi?
You're going to tie my arms behind me and hang me from the ceiling?
Do to me? Yeah.
So what I did.
So how'd that go?
So what I had done for 6 years is my own physical rehab in Hanoi. I was doing fingertip push-ups on a broken arm, ignoring the pain, and I was doing one-arm chin-ups because I was down to my wrestling weight at 145, and so I've been, I could do 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 leg raises without deep knee bends, because I was in pretty good shape. So I got in there and I said, well, I'm going to give these guys my John Wayne speech. So I gave them a John Wayne speech that brought tears to their eyes. I said, I'm not a cripple. I'm a Navy warrior. I want to fight for my country. I want to lead men in battle. I don't want to be kicked out as a cripple. I can do 100 push-ups and 40 of them on my fingertips, and I can do 18 one-arm chin-ups. I said, I can grab a hold of that frame on that door and do chin-ups right here. And I reached up and grabbed the door frame, and they said, get down off there. And he turned around and said, you got anything else to say? And I said, no, sir. I want to serve my country. And they said, you're dismissed. So I turned around and walked out the door, and I got 2 steps down the hallway, and I hear, McGrath, get back in here. And I went back in there, and he said, you got enough. Now go fly your airplane. And so then I finished out 24 years as an officer and flew. I served a tour at the Air Force at the Naval Academy as a department head, and then I went to Ecuador speaking my Hanoi University Spanish and flew down there. So I flew for 24 years and retired as a 06 and decided to be I want to be an airline pilot at age 50.
That's outstanding.
That's fantastic indeed.
I could keep asking you questions for about 17 days.
All night long. Yeah.
I don't mind sharing. You can tell I don't mind talking about it. And I never charge money when I go talk to high schools or universities or groups because I know people are curious. This is an unknown time and a different generation. And you hear about Stockdale and Reisner and Bud Day and I know people are really curious, so I don't mind sharing, and that's why I hope you guys learned something tonight. Hey, who's that fat guy with the funny belly?
Well, there's that. I don't think you understand, and I could be wrong, but I don't think you understand the level of respect that we have for those of you who have suffered more than anyone should ever be asked to for their country, what you endured and did so with grace and good cheer and bring it back to help others learn that, this is duty.
Thank you.
Duty is big. And it's putting country before self means something. And it's a rare quality, and it's rarer and rarer anymore.
Thank you.
We're just honored to be in your presence, to say the least.
Hey, go back, Sticks Bago. Yeah. So this is a picture of your coming home.
Well,
can you see
she's
that?
in the other room. she's a little older hunk now, but she's she's still with me. She's put up with me
Oh
for
my
66 years. This was taken a couple of days after I got into thing. I left my wife with a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old in
Wow.
1965 when I went on cruise, and
Wow.
and then for 6 years, for 3 years, she didn't know if I was dead or alive. And finally, they got a list out with most of the names on it. They found out I'm alive. But then another 3 years go, and you don't know if they're ever coming home at all. So, it's just a big mystery.
Yeah, that's
and,
rough.
and that's the other half of the story is the women. The women that stuck by these guys for 6, 7, and 8 years.
Right.
Now, there was a few divorces in there. And, Everett Alvarez's wife went to Mexico and got a Mexican divorce. And, there's a few stories like that are overplayed. But overall, over 50%, more like 53% of the guys are still married today to the same woman.
So
our
gonna.
national statistics are as good as the national average. And I was lucky enough that my wife stuck with me and put up with all that shit. It was so bad.
Is there a POW wives group? Are they are close to being as sorority as you are fraternal?
No, they kind of lived in different bases and different things. And and like the Air Force, they abandoned their wives. The Air Force said, "Well, your husband's missing in action. You've got to move out of base housing if you're and you're on your own. If you want to live on a government housing, we have this barracks out there by Yuma, Arizona, in the desert.
Oh my gosh!
That we can put you in a square building, and you can live in that square building in the middle of the desert." Of course, nobody ever took it up. The Navy was different. The Navy said, "Okay, here we're giving you a legal officer, giving you a CACO officer, which is a casualty officer,
casualty assistance.
You can stay on base housing as long as you want to," and the Navy ended up taking care of the Air Force women.
Wow.
And because in those days, the women couldn't get a credit card without your signature. They couldn't buy a car without.
Oh, right. The husband. Yeah. Bring your husband in to get that. Yeah.
And so the women were going through hell, and a lot of them couldn't get their Air Force and Navy pay. The pay officers say, "Well, he's missing in action. We can't give you his money." And they said, and they had kids, and I mean, it was hell for some of these women. So that's another part of the story that's written about in books, and it's not pretty. And but
I was going to ask which was worse, getting your arms tied behind your back and hung up, or rooming with an Air Force guy, But
you might. Yeah, most of the Air Force guys, they had 334 Navy Air Force pilots. The Navy had 152, so they outnumbered us about 2 to 1.
Okay.
So most of my roommates were, but of course they had 2 people in those airplanes. They couldn't, one person to get lost. They had a guy in the back seat in the Air Force plane with the banana. You ever hear about the banana? The guy in the back seat has a banana on a stick, and he holds it out in front of the nose on the front seater, and of course the front seater turns towards the banana, and so that's how the back seater tells him where to go. But
that is so
Navy,
awesome.
we didn't have the guy with the banana.
Yeah, well, you knew how to fly an airplane, for crying out loud. You were flying it off in an aircraft carrier, and you're all by yourself. So,
Let me
back at home, you had
banana navigation,
banana peelers.
Okay, well,
I'm sorry.
Let me tell you guys
an
aviation story which you'll all recognize, or the pilots will for sure. In your life, I ended up with over 750 carrier missions, daytime, nighttime, all weather, pitching, seas, storms, weather.
Okay.
Vertigo,
while you're on that statistic, how many hours in each airplane too?
Well, not too many, because we had short missions in the Navy. We count missions; they count hours.
There you go.
They have lunch up there, and they get a rest period for 8 hours before they land.
Okay,
and they count hours. But anyway, here's a story for there I was, and this is kind of to tell your listeners what it's like to be on a carrier at nighttime at sea, hundreds of miles from an airfield, and you're up there. The weather's turned bad. The sea is pitching, and on a ship, there's 3 things. You got pitch, roll, and yaw. Well, pitching is straight up and down like this. roll is like this, and then you get pitch, roll, and yaw at the same time, and it's three things, and they call that Dutch roll.
Yep.
Well, Dutch roll is the most ominous. And you're trying to land at nighttime in a rainstorm with 200.5 overcast, and you're coming down with a low fuel light. You got a red light in your cockpit, and you only got 1 or 2 passes to get aboard, or you're going to have to eject and have the helicopter pick you up alongside the carrier. And you got vertigo. So imagine yourself with a low fuel light coming down in a storm, and you got vertigo, and you're going to pop out. You got 1 second to make one correction before landing. That's about it, 1.5 seconds or so. And you got one quick adjustment, and then bam, you hit. Well, that encapsulates the naval aviator and carrier landing at nighttime in the worst of conditions. It is scary as hell. And guess what? For the non-pilots, they might say, well, you really grip the stick hard. Well, for a pilot, you and I know you have it trimmed up perfectly so that you're just flying with your fingertips. You are not touching any pressure at all with those fingertips. You're flying like this, because if you grip the thing, you'll never get aboard on a carrier. And for the Air Force guys, they love to have an exchange tour with the Navy pilots. They'd love to compete with us. And one of my POWs up there was an Air Force pilot. He was shot down in a Navy F-8 and captured from a Navy squadron on an exchange tour. His name was Bob Abbott. And the Vietnamese are always confused. Why is an Air Force officer in a Navy airplane on a Navy carrier? They never quite understood that. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to describe to your listeners that, it sounds terrible, but we all take it as a challenge, and it's fun. Of course, our wives don't understand. You get out there in a carrier, you don't worry about things back home. You just worry about where's the cake and where's the food and where's my bed to sleep and where's my airplane to fly. It's
right.
It's
time to get some sliders. Time to go fly.
Yeah.
And what's the movie tonight?
Bingo.
Yeah. What's the movie?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and that you just brought up something, Masher, and I bet you can say, spot on. You guys would fly a mission, but your heart rate would really be up when you came back for the night landing.
Yeah. Yep, heart rate, that's true. And they've had monitors on that and studies on that. And they say that when you take a trap and you hit that wire, your heart actually stops for about a second. It is you're really pumped up. I'm gonna tell you about the word bingo. Oh, bingo is a story we all love. And I was a lieutenant out there, and I was off the coast of North Vietnam, bad weather, 200.5 overcast, and I'm coming down, and I hit an OK3 wire. Every pass is graded, and there's a hook skip, boom, and I'm off into the clouds with a hook skip number 3 wire. They come around again, hook skip. They're watching the hook is hitting in the correct spot, but it's not catching the wire. Well, I did that 3 times. Oh, and then I said, emergency bingo, and they said, you've got to get aboard or die. And I said, I'm down to minimum fuel. And they said, well, join up with the tanker. He's right ahead of you. He's waiting for you. So I pulled up to the tanker, and I'm plugged in, and we climb into the clouds, and I'm right up about 2 feet from his light, and I'm pushing tighter and tighter and tighter. And he finally says, well, we've been having trouble with the drogue all day, and it's not transferred fuel. You're on your own. Good luck. I'm 200 miles from Da Nang, and I'm on low fuel. I only got a few hundred pounds, and so immediately my training, I started climbing with max power as high and as fast as I can get, and I pull out my knee pad, which tells a profile. And the profiles, to get your maximum range with a minimum amount of fuel. And I climb up to like 30,000 feet, and then I slam it back to idle, and I glide into Da Nang at 3 in the morning, 3 a.m. And I call and declare an emergency and said, I'm landing in Da Nang. And Da Nang says, negative, the field's closed. And I said, negative, I'm going to land. They said, negative, the field is under mortar attack. the field is closed. I said, negative, I'm going to land. They said, negative, you're not permitted to land. Pull alongside the shoreline and eject, and we'll try to get to you in the water. And I said, negative, I'm going to land. So we argued all the way down until I landed. And I rolled out with about 100 pounds of fuel, and which you guys know in a jet, that's only fume. And,
well, because your fuel gauge is plus or minus 500, right, on any given night.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's for anybody that wants to fly Navy Air. You got to be ready for those things.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
Thank you. Wow.
Just amazing.
Masher.
Well, I want to offer an invitation, and certainly don't expect an answer, but would love to have your wife chat with us about her experience through all of this.
Oh no, on the show. That's no fat chance. You'll never get her to talk.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to offer. Like I said, didn't want an answer, but would someone who's hung with you for 66 years is probably a real interesting lady to chat with. So. Anyway,
well, before we go, I don't know if how you doing on time.
We've got all night. It's up to you.
Well, I'm going to mention one more thing. I got
okay.
Please do.
Things. In my life, the kids grew up. They went to the Naval Academy. They became aviators, and my grandson went to Naval Academy, and just this week, he joined United Airlines as a pilot. So.
That's a big deal.
10.5 years minimum time with the Navy, and jumped into the first class a week ago. So I'm really proud of him, following in my footsteps as an airline pilot, and he'll fly in the reserves too. He flew the EP3, which is it's old. It's probably 50, 70 years old, and like he said, he's got more emergency training, more engine shuts down than any other pilot in the Navy.
Right.
And he said there's an emergency. So he's well trained. He'll be a good asset to United.
Yes, he will.
How did that feel, having a grandson go in as a Navy pilot, having your experience under your belt? What was that like?
Well, of course, you're very proud, and of course, the girls in the family saying, "Oh, the pilot sounds dangerous," and the girls are not too happy. But for the guys, he's proud. And that's a real accomplishment to become a naval or Air Force aviator or Army aviator. That takes a lot of dedication to become a pilot, and
it does.
Not everybody can do it, and not everybody can afford it, or have the background or the ability. It's if you're not meant, you guys know, if you're not meant to be a pilot, you should not be there, because you're going to kill, sooner or later, you're going to kill yourself or somebody else if you're not comfortable at being a pilot. If you're trying to force yourself into an occupation because everybody else does it, or for some other invalid reason,
it's a recipe for disaster.
And but if you're in aviation, and you're right, and you like to be flat on your back and upside down, and then a dogfight going around in a circle. If you're the type of guy that likes to fight and kill and win, you might make a good pilot.
There you go. Fantastic.
I can't add anything to that. That's pretty much spot on. Thanks, Master.
Profound and true. So
I do have one more advertisement.
Yeah.
Anybody that's listening and they're in the Air Force or Navy or Army or in the service, I do recommend that you stay in for a 20-year career if you can. If you got it in you, it's I tried to resign. I resigned and I was on an involuntary extension, and when I was shot down, so I had
how about that?
My plans were rudely interrupted as a 27-year-old.
Yeah, but they were.
My recommendations for anybody that likes the military and is in it, I recommend you stay for a career, because at age 42 or 43, when you retire, you're set for life. You can go chase any dream you want to with medical attention and pay the rest of your life. So that's my advertisement for the armed services. An honorable place to serve. You'll learn a lot, and it's just a wonderful experience for anybody that can do it.
You make lifelong friends.
Just
You
do.
You
Oh
know,
my!
and you get to do things that nobody else gets to do.
I
Now,
have a little. I have a little story I tell people that some people get out to chase the dream and make $1 million when they're 20, when they're 30 years old, and the other guy plugs along in the military. Well, you all meet when you're 45 or 50, and you ask, say, who did the best in life? Who accomplished the most? Who was most settled? And it's always the guy that stayed in the military. The
Sure.
guy that got out to chase his dream, 20 years later, he'll say, I wish I would have stayed. And that is a statement you'll hear from the people that jumped out to chase their $1 million dreams. They'll all say, I wish I would have stayed. And I'll just leave it at that.
I can concur with 16 good years. I wish I would have stayed. The whole lot of things would be a whole lot different and better for me in many ways now had I stayed. But
so
Yeah.
Masher, can we get a little closure to the "So There I Was" opener? So you are spinning rapidly because your stick's frozen. You're heading towards the ground. You eject using the lower handle. You had
Yeah.
some serious flail injuries.
Yeah.
What happened when you hit the ground? What happened?
Well, that'll complete the story of how did you get your knee in place? Because when I hit the ground, all of a sudden I'm suffocating, I'm moaning, and I don't know why. I'm semi-conscious, and I can't breathe, and I can't move, and in my brain I'm semi-conscious, but I did get my fingers underneath my mask, and I broke the seal, so I'm breathing. And about that time, they jumped on me, and there's guys with knives on me. I had a knife in my throat. They're cutting my clothes off. They cut my G suit off. They cut my survival vest off. They were hacking at me with machetes and stripping me. And I'm still kind of coming out of it. And I hurt, but I don't know why. And after they stripped me down naked, they stood me up, and I hear them say, "Ooh!" And as I collapsed, my knee was out of joint. It wasn't in like this. It was like this.
Oh,
So
geez.
my leg is out like this. And I hear them go, "Ooh!"
Ooh.
They can't walk me. And they did put me on a stretcher finally and carried me into a village where the villagers, the women, beat me with bamboo switches and twisted that loose leg to hear me scream.
Oh, shit.
So after the women got through with me, they laid me down, and I knew I could feel my leg out of joint. I could feel it wasn't even in there, and because I could feel my other toe, my leg is just sticking out. So there was one guard that was guarding me, and he was looking at me, and I was tied up, but I could take my fingers, and I did this to him. I pointed him, then I pointed my leg, and then I'd go like this. Like
try to put your leg back in joint.
Like,
trying to signal.
And that guard with just a rifle, probably 18, 19 years old, he put his rifle against a tree. He sat down. And no medical training, I'm sure. He put his foot in my crotch. He put my foot underneath his armpit, and he gave a big push, like a pull, and he popped that leg in straight like that.
Oh my God.
Now it's loose, but it's lined up. It's no longer like this.
Yeah.
And he pulled it. Now I tell that story to a doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh my God, you could have died." Because it turns out that there's some type of vein or artery that goes through the center of this bone and through this bone, and and it's pulled, it's stretched, and the doctor told me once, he says, that's why on a football field, if you have a football player on a football field, you don't try to relocate the knee on the football field, because if you pull it, there's a chance that it scrapes and you rupture that artery. I think it's probably an artery, not a vein. And if you rupture that, your leg will swell up and you'll die. You'll just bleed to death. So when he did that, he jerked it hard enough that it cleared and it went together, and it didn't rupture the artery. So they, the doctors, you tell that story to them, and they say, you're lucky to be alive."
So Styx is in the background. He's a nurse practitioner, and he calls it the popliteal artery. And that's a thing.
Popliteal artery.
Poop.
Yeah.
Well, then I did so much exercise. Well, I couldn't use that. It took me a year to walk, and then I did so much exercise in Hanoi that I strengthened those muscles that I used muscle power to hold my leg together and get back on flight status. I was pretty strong. I could do one-legged, deep knee bends, and so I really worked those muscles hard, and that lasted me until about 20 years ago when it all started collapsing. But now I have a Smith and Nephew. I call it a Smith and Wesson knee. They reconstructed it. They cut off my two legs, the top and the bottom, and they cut these off, and they built me a mechanical knee with flat plates like this that work like this. And damned if I don't have a great 20-year-old knee. It's just, I can do anything I want: ski, hunt, fish, jump. I got this.
Should have done that 50 years ago, huh?
Yeah. So that, and we have to laugh. That's the best part of my body. It's the only thing that doesn't hurt.
Right.
But but yeah, that was a pretty serious injury.
Yeah.
And they didn't know the anterior and posterior cruciates were snapped off until they got in there and operated. And the doctor said, "Did you know you have those? They're all shriveled up and gone. Did you know that?" And I said, "I had no idea." But evidently, that's what happened during the ejection when that spin.
Wow. Well, okay.
Amazing.
Wow. Well, repeat hit on this already, and I just want to reiterate. Thank you so much for your service, Masher.
Yeah, well,
and sharing your stories with us and all of our listeners.
Indeed, we're deeply grateful to you.
Yeah.
Humbled by your presence, and thank you indeed for your service.
You're welcome.
And thank you.
Thanks for inviting me to join this group. I hope, I know you're aiming it towards people that are interested in aviation, and there's a lot of POWs that were hurt more than me and went through just as much or more than me. So I'm just kind of the average guy that was part of the team, and that's who we are. We were a team then, and we're still a team today.
Boy, look up the definition of humility in the dictionary and see that, huh, Vic? Oh.
Hey, Masher, would you give the website while we're talking? Would you say your website that?
The POWs, when we got back, we organized into a 501c19, and people say, "What's a 19?" Well, if you look it up, it's the same as a 501c3, but 19 means veterans. So we're a veterans tax exempt. We did that in 1973 when we got back, and so we're a pretty tight organization today. And we have a website which is I'm a historian, so I am a historian. I was a 2-time past president of our 501, and now I'm the historian because I know where all the bodies are in all the closets and all the secrets. So they won't let me go. So I took all my research papers. There's 212 of my research papers that I have, about almost half of them on the internet on a website. And if anybody wants to know anything about the POW, who's alive, who's dead, which squadron, anything at all about the POWs from the Vietnam Air, you can go to my website, and it's just a server like www. One word is VietnamWarPOWs.com. And I'm going to repeat that.
VietnamWarPOWs.com.
Yeah, VietnamWarPOWs.com.
Yeah,
and you're going to see all my
site.
papers. You're going to see about 200 books written by and about us, including mine. And you can buy those right on the website off the internet. And you can read all about all of the POWs, and you get the biography of all the POWs too. My biography, everybody's biography. You can, and anybody that's an interest in the Vietnam POWs, there it is, VietnamWarPOWs.com. That's it. So if you
Yeah.
go there, that's all my work. And there's 16 different camps in North Vietnam, and there's a lot more. I only have about half of my information up. I'm still working on putting the rest, and I'm building this for posterity. 100 years from now, all of us on this broadcast, we're all going to be gone. But 100
Yep.
years from now, I want people to know more, the truth about what happened with the POWs.
Yeah. Well, and that's
Well,
a lot of why we're here. People need
That's
to
why
know
we're
this and understand it and hear it
Yep.
I
firsthand.
go off in another subject that's happened. If I know. Well, people that are bored can jump off.
Oh no,
But
you keep talking.
guys-
Don't you worry about
You
that.
guys have heard about the fraud in Minnesota.
Yep.
It's pretty big,
Okay.
pretty bad fraud in Minnesota. Did you know that the VA, the Veterans Administration, is giving benefits to 2,015 phony POWs?
Oh
That's
my
my
God.
battle. For 25 years, I have been fighting the VA. I am the guy that's exposed the VA to the amount of frauds they have in the VA, and I have it in writing for them. And they admit
Unbelievable.
giving benefits to 2,000 frauds that are not recognized by Department of Defense. The only true POWs are on my website, VietnamWarPOWs.com.
You would think that they would notice that the number doesn't match up. I
No,
mean,
they don't.
just saying.
The VA is tighter than the CIA. They neither
Wow.
confirm nor deny anything. And once they put a guy on, and what they do, they have a policy of we trust a applicant that says it's a POW is telling the truth.
Wow.
So they accept him without verification and put him in as a POW. Now, what that does is POWs in the VA, it moves you from category 7 to category 2 for care. So if you're in category 2, you're right at the top of the list. You go in and say, "Hey, I sprained my ankle." They'll say, "Well, come right in. We'll give you an appointment with the doctor and take care of you." But so that, and if you're a POW, you get dental care for life, and the benefits for POWs is it's worth telling a lie to the VA and hope they never catch you.
Well,
So
it's-
right
you
now,
just-
I know there's 2,000 phony POWs getting benefits. So
wow.
it's a sad subject. They won't change it. They won't get rid of them, and we've exposed it the Associated Press first exposed this in 2009. I can give you the link. And just last May 19th, Stars and Stripes exposed it. But and hundreds of senators and congressmen know about it, but nobody will do anything about it, and the VA won't do anything about it. So it's just a sad part of our history. And you can tell I'm mad about it. I've been fighting them for 30 years. I've been fighting on getting 20 POWs kicked out of the VA. So I'm
It's stolen valor is what it is. It's stolen
Same
valor.
thing. We're talking the same thing.
It fits very closely.
Yeah.
And it's kind of off the subject, but since I'm telling my story and I've been fighting it 30 years on the side, past the POW adventure, that is part of my life.
Yep. Absolutely. A huge part. And
Well, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested in that subject, they can communicate directly with me, and I can go into more detail directly with anybody that's interested.
Well, we say we land this plane, gents.
I think we should. And before we completely wrap, I want to say we said thank you to you, and those are inadequate words to say the least. But we also want to thank all the men and women on active duty, our veterans, and our first responders. Thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Thank you for inviting me.
Just as importantly as those members you just talked about, we need to also recognize our families, the wives, the children, the ones that are at home while their service member or first responder is away doing their job so that we can all enjoy our freedoms. So thank you to those family members.
They missed a few holidays and birthdays and everything else. Yeah. Huge thanks also to Dave Hamilton for the knowledge and support and the steady hand that helps us get this show out to you every single week. Thank you, Dave, for helping make this show a reality.
Our bandwidth is handled by Cashfly, and advertising support comes from Backbeat Media, also from Dave Hamilton. Both absolutely critical keeping the lights on.
Absolutely. And if you enjoy the show, would you please head over to sothereiwas.us/rate and give us a 5-star rating? It helps more people find the show. And if you've got to give a 3-star rating, go find another show, give it to them, come back and talk to us and tell us what we can do to improve.
Yeah, give it to somebody else. Hey, if you got an idea for a guest, a story, or a way to make a show better, email us at repeat.sothereiwas.us or fig@sothereiwas.us.
I'm still here. If anybody has a question, like one of your listeners has a question, and you have the time, I can answer any questions. Yeah, I don't know if that's part of your program.
Sure, absolutely. And what's a good email address for them to reach out to you, sir?
mmcgrath62 at comcast.net. So that's McGrath. That's for Mike. McGrath 62. That's it. Right there. You got it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. At comcast.net.
Thanks, Masher.
Fantastic. Hey, don't forget we have a merch store. I'm wearing this cool hoodie tonight, but we've got hats and koozies and all kinds of stuff.
I'm wearing this badass bikini.
I'm wearing this badass bikini. I'm not wearing the bikini under my hoodie tonight. I'm not doing it. So,
I might be,
but
I'm not lying to you.
If it exists and we can put a logo on it, we'll do it. Get over to our merch store, sothereiwas.us/merch, and make yourself available to some of the cool stuff with the Cool Show logo on it, designed by none other than Styx himself.
That went off the rails pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Hey, speaking of sharing, hey, tell 2 friends about the show. That's free. It costs you nothing. Word of mouth is still king. So help a buddy out, will you?
Absolutely. So, hey, also to our Patreon supporters and subscribers, and the direct donors at sothereiwas.us/donate and Venmo. Now, if you go to sothereiwas.us/donate, the top item is a Venmo there. Venmo takes less of a cut if you try to support us. We're deeply appreciative. A thank you is also not a nice enough phrase for what you do for us. You're sacrificing your hard-earned money to support the show, and without you, it simply wouldn't keep going. Don't tell your financial advisor what you're doing with your money, though. Don't do it.
No, don't do that. And we question your judgment by throwing money on us, but we are so very humbled and appreciative because this shit ain't free. Unfortunately. Hey, massive thanks to our 2 So There I Was producers that have been in the background all night, throwing pictures up, throwing website addresses up just now. They are really the brains behind the whole operation. Sticks and Bago. Thank you, gents.
Grateful to them for that. Yeah. And also to Badass over at bdsaviationphotography.com. Some amazing shots, some amazing aviation photography. bdsaviationphotography.com. He's an artist. Plain and simple. That's it.
That brown liquor's taking an effect. Hey.
There you go.
I'm not hearing any sounds. No. I need to hear some sounds.
Sounds. I don't know.
Hey, the sound. There's the sound I'm hearing. Kind of in the background there. Those are the sounds of the 2 F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. The Dos Gringos.
Count them 2. Unos dos.
I just introduced a couple of buddies to the Dos Gringos last night, as a matter of fact. So they got 2 more fans for life now. Great songs, 4 albums. You having a bad day, fire them up. It'll fix all your shit.
Absolutely. You can find the Dos Gringos on Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you listen to music. Great music. Go listen to them. So until next time, folks, I'd say stay safe and...
Check 6. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down in the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. It's what?
He said it's over.
Oh boy, is this great!
It is great indeed. Thank you so much, Masher. All right, everybody. We're going to end the stream because we got a show to put out in about a half an hour. Take care. Good night. God bless.
Peace.
And we are out.